Hello, George, Advantage Food Forest. Just made a video on how to make these. I made one last week. This is the larger size. And the drill's just too loud. So when I viewed it, it wasn't worth sharing. So I'm going to go over it again. You can measure across here every 3 inches or so, up and down, make a grid pattern and mark it out. It's really not that complicated. The worms don't care. So I just went along every 3 inches and drilled a hole. Same in the sides. Some things I'd say be careful of that I've had problems with. I've made a lot of these over the years. Still have our first one from. I used it for 12 years before we started. It's probably 14 years before I moved inside with these worms last year. After the third, fourth year, they're in the compost. We had them both places, but I use this and it just works so incredibly well. And then eventually storing it in the compost, they moved out of the bottom into the compost, and we just have a ton of worms. That's why we started the worm business. But this system, again, I'll show you how I made it. Was drilling those holes, the bottoms and the sides, through 2 rows. Today's a warmer day. Some little tips and tricks. On a warmer day, you won't break it when you go through. If it's a cool, cold day and you're drilling too hard, you'll go through the first bin, doing them 2 at one time. You'll hit the second bin with too much force and you'll crack it. So either pick a warm day, don't use a lot of force on a cooler day, or do 1 at a time on a cold day. Don't drill too close to the bottom like this hole. You're liable to get in this bottom. It doesn't matter, but you're liable to get too close to this edge here. So make your first set of holes at least 1 inch down. Second ones I do 5 or 6 inches down. They're all across the bottom and the side. Go over again how this gets used, how we use this. It's just a great, I don't remember where I saw it. I'll give credit if I did. I just noticed these shards come out in the first video I showed. Careful, a couple things. Try to collect them all. I drilled it with this underneath, and I collected all the ones off the top. There's so many microplastics out there. We don't want to deal with those. So I clean those up, put them aside. The other thing is careful of shards sticking out like this. Try and clean all those up. If they're in the bottom here, there's a couple in here now. You're cleaning the compost out when you're emptying it out and collecting your compost. You'll drag your hands across and cut your fingers. Ask me how I know. So I guess those are some of the things. Hole placement, get rid of the shards. You can use sandpaper. You can use a little bit larger drill bit. I didn't have to today. It's warm and pliable. Didn't do it much. And just touch the holes with a larger drill bit. So how the system works, one bin goes inside the other. And there's a few options. You can buy these. We do a 5-gallon size and this 27-gallon size. So these are 2 27-gallon totes or 2 5-gallon totes for a smaller family. We sell the entire system with one of our breeder beds. So our breeder systems are our biggest, healthiest worms. We're breeding those every 3 weeks. We're changing the bedding out, giving them new, fresh bedding that's got tons of energy and food in it. Top dress feeding them. Putting a less per square foot, only 500 per couple square feet, so that they really are encouraged to breed. Because of that, they're very active, and the castings in there are just right full of cocoons. So the option is to just buy one of these systems from us, and I'm going to have to go over prices and write them down. I'm not sure exactly what they'll be. I think it's 25 and 35, but 5-gallon, 27-gallon. Just buy one of these systems from us, purchase worms somewhere else, and get it going. You could buy one of these systems from us and buy worms from us. Buy one of these systems, and what I would suggest is buy one of those breeder bins. You could not buy one of these systems, buy the breeder bin and make one of these yourself. But when you buy the entire system, it's that breeder bin, which is 2 gallons of castings, 1 gallon for the 5-gallon. The 1,000 cocoons or so that are going to be in that are going to be 4 baby worms approximately each. So there's another 4,000 worms over the coming 3 months that'll be growing to size and working. That makes it a very mature system. It already has the 2 gallons of castings, which has that soil food web already in it. It has the fungi and the bacteria to start breaking down materials and working its way up through the feeders that are in there, the nematodes, the protozoa, the microarthropods. They're all going to be in that compost that you get already, those castings. They're the decomposers. So all that soil food web is going to be in there, really speeding things up. So now how to use these systems depending on how you do it. Let's just say you you built or bought one of these systems and you just got getting started and you bought some worms. So you got a system and some worms. Then you just simply take ripped up cardboard, ripped up newspaper, scrap mail, leaves, shred it. I put it in a bucket and get it good and wet. You want it real moist. Fill the bottom up with a couple inches of it. If you are just buying the system and worms and you don't have some bedding to inoculate the bedding with, it takes a little bit longer for it to get started, but it works just fine. So what I would do in that case is with the beddings in there, I built the system, I've got the wetted cardboard or carbon material in there, feed each corner first. So one corner at a time, pull the carbon back, put the food in that, your kitchen scraps in that corner, cover it up with a little more carbon so it doesn't stink or start to smell. We never have any smells, I don't want to scare anybody. And then you'll do all four corners. So and a few days later, you'll do this corner, and then this corner, and this corner. And that gets the worms to go all over in there, putting anything they eat through their system, which is just really filled with bacteria to break it down, and putting that back onto the material around it, inoculating that material, so that breakdown starts to happen. After those 4 feedings, you're free to go ahead and start feeding like you normally would, by putting a layer of food scraps down, then a layer of that wetted carbon on top of that, whatever your choice of carbon. If you buy a system from us, like I said, it'll come with all that in there. And you just start with the worm castings in the bottom with all the eggs in it and feed on top, with the food on top of that, and the carbon on top of that to hold the smell down. So once this fills up, the way we do it is keep it covered. I just leave a second bin in there when it's empty. Take it out, feed, cover with carbon. Take it out, feed, cover with carbon. A month or so, 2 months in. Actually, these go quite a few months, depending on your food waste. Until you come up and start seeing those holes that are in there. See these holes here? Once I can see the holes, that's my indicator to change it, and it's just a general indicator. At that point, I'd stop feeding the bottom bin. Imagine this bin's up where it would be full of food. I would add the carbon in here, some food on top of that, a little bit of carbon on top of that. Again, they're going to be in the bottom, their food source is going to run out, and they're going to search out that food on top. Mostly the holes in the bottom, but the side if they get that far, and they're going to crawl up through that and discover that food on their own. So 2 weeks to a month later, you're ready. You've been feeding this top one, it's been accumulating food. You take it off, set this one aside. You'll make this your main bin now. You'll harvest these castings, use them however you will, and put it back inside of here and start over once it's full up again, repeating that whole system. As far as harvesting the worms, you can use the castings just like that. They're going to have some worms left over. They're going to have some cocoons left over. Those are great for your garden beds, for the top of your house plants. Doesn't hurt anything at all. It's wonderful. You can smell it. It smells wonderful. It's great. It's earthy. We use it mostly in compost teas and extracts. Adding that to your garden beds is wonderful. Even if you're too cold for the worms in the wintertime, they only make it to 30 degrees, much lower, and they're going to die. But again, like the cocoons that were in there, I talk so fast. Like the cocoons that were in there when you originally bought the system, or the ones that they're going to make as you get going, they're going to be in your garden bed. So if it gets too cold in your garden bed, next year you'll have worms hatch when it gets warm enough. So we use them in our garden beds, in our house plants, in our potted plants, teas, and extracts. An extract is just simply in a bag and getting it out. I made videos on that as well. Where were we? So another way is if you want to collect all those worms. So rather than putting those worms, losing the few when you've harvested it, it's filled up, they've harvested themselves in the top bin, there's going to be some worms left behind. So when you harvest those castings, if you want, what you can do is dump it out onto a flat surface, make a few piles, cone-shaped piles. If you wait overnight, you'll wait, and just under the cap of that pile, most of the worms will be waiting there for you. Do that once or twice, and you've gotten most all the worms out of it. Anything else I want to say about these costs? Again, I'm not going to put the cost down until I know for sure it's on our price list. We're just getting things going. I'll have this available at tomorrow's farmers market here in East Asheville. Hope to see you there. Fat Ninja Food Forest. I'm George. Classes, consultations, worms, red wiggler compost, entire worm breeding systems, and starter bins to get you started. Change better than a holiday. Peace.